Hello, dear guests, friends, and subscribers on my channel. Thank you for following our issues here and for following the events that are unfolding in the world with us. And hello, Alexey Nikolaevich. Thank you for joining us today. Friends, everything is rather traditional today in our today's live stream. First of all, thank you for paying attention to the QR codes we have on the screen. Near Alexey, there is a barcode leading to his School of Personal Growth. If you are curious about his programs and seminars, please proceed. And next to me, there is a barcode that leads to my channel. That's where you can subscribe, click like, and of course, support my channel. And of course, you can reach out to us for further questions in the next interviews. We usually try to meet a couple times a month, so you can post a bunch of questions that you have, and we do have questions later today. Actually, the whole stream is made out of them. Let's talk about all of these in complex, and of course, we'll read some questions from the live chat as well. But at the end, we'll also conclude the results of our poll here. And here is what this poll is about. When, most likely, will the regime of ceasefire be announced? And options: November, December, January. They will not. We are heading towards capitulation. So what do you think about these four options, Alexey? Do you think November is a good month for ceasefire? Well, real plans are for the new year. New year since 0 o'clock. Will these plans be realized? That's a separate question. But for now, everybody aims at the new year, the big Yalta, and participants of this process. But looking at recent weeks, it seems that global Yalta starts to provoke each other with more things. Seems to have agreed upon anything, then boom, all of a sudden, Koreans appear on the front. And then we hear statements from the representatives of the United States. And then the other side maybe talks about maybe Chinese troops may appear at some point. And, you know, we can maybe even see some troops from Tanzania or planet Nibiru in this fashion. Let's say, therefore, they're aiming at the first of next year, at the first day of next year. But will it happen? We'll see. All right. So, dear friends, let's look at the results of this poll later. But it looks like most people are mentioning liking the capitulation option. Wait, Alexander. Let's see if we can understand what you mean by capitulation. Your eyelash fell down. Did it capitulate in the face of gravity? Or did you sneeze and that capitulated in front of some allergy? Or if you were electrocuted a little bit while taking off synthetic t-shirt, did you capitulate because of that static electricity? What capitulation are we talking about? That's my question. All right, we can talk about different kinds of capitulation in military and political and geopolitical meanings, but I suggest we start our main conversation with incredible, I would say, message of the last hour. The first item of the internal plan of conducting this war is resisting disinformation. This is Litvin, advisor to the President of Ukraine now, who came out and said that the first and the most important thing is resisting disinformation. And then the second is the government working with population. So we could have expected a lot of things from the plans, what Ukrainians need to do to continue fighting this war and to have some chance at success. But why would it start with disinformation? Alex, you and some other stream hosts, they continue torturing me by forcing me to comment these questions. Well, I don't have anybody else to force, Alexey. Right, then I can comment on this, and I am tending to comment on this with a military and rather crude language, but since it will most likely lead me immediately to a bunch of possible accusations by Ukrainian government as defamation of government in times of war and stuff like that. Not that I'm afraid of them. I already have 2 fake cases started against me by prosecutors of Zelensky. But let's try to be most delicate. I'm trying to gather my inner zen and inner calm to be delicate. But let's give some context. All these conversations that are happening here, we are documenting the chronicles of crumbling, the chronicles of a fallout. It doesn't make sense to comment anything in regards of work of Ukraine being productive or creative or positive. Roughly since about the end of August, there is nothing positive we can comment on. Remember, there was a TV show where each episode the plane kept falling from the sky, and that's kind of what we're doing now. Those who are trying to see some possible hooks and opportunities and ways to win in this situation, they are wrong. What we're looking at are the chronicles of fallout, the chronicles of crumbling of nation. Recent statements are actually marked with a direct stamp of madness from the government. And I'm saying that as not as political pundit, but as somebody who is dealing with psychology professionally, semi-professionally for the last several dozens of years. These people actually are rather high-ranking bureaucrats in different levels. They're trying to establish certain communication with the society, and they express some of their opinions outward, but reading through that, it's madness. It's just deterioration. And only in this context that you should be reading all that. So, speaking of Litvin statement, it's good that they're starting to repeat the words that I was saying in the office back 4 years ago when I first joined them as advisor in strategic communications and when I explained to them what is strategic communications. But these are slogans that they're doing now. What does an average person do who is not specially conditioned or prepared to read and understand all that? Usually people in this case say the words that they would love to have God or force of nature to talk to him. So when Litvin comes out and says that it would be good for us to work with disinformation and to explain how things actually work, well, you are the advisor on communication for President. Whom are you talking about? For us, it would be. Who is that us that are supposed to provide this communication? And in my view, this is all a consequence of unfolding madness. And we're observing a madhouse that is burning on all four sides, and on three sides it was set on fire by the dwellers of this institution themselves. All right, Alexey, so if we are talking about communication, let's go back to business. Oh, Alex, this is about business. This is really about business. I just filtered a lot of crude language. Okay, no, in a slightly different angle. Let's leave the framework of the context that you have drawn, the core of their messaging. Look, our president continues giving interviews, both in the West and at home. He just had given enough commentary to the Western media, and the Western media comes out and says it was very difficult. And many of them noted that it was difficult to communicate with him. Speaking of communicating with the West, a lot of them are actually in a state of shock, I think. Germans, I think Austrian newspaper published that his English language is at minus. Yermak does not speak good language and partners do not understand what he is saying. But he still returned back to Ukraine, gave an interview in Uzhgorod, a big press conference, and talked about things. And then Litvin comes out. So if you want to present the first article of this inner plan, Uzhgorod is a great place. There is a lot of communications happening. President is talking abroad. President is communicating internally. Everything is being sent out to public, but there is no core of the messaging. There is no idea behind his message. Are we out of any ideas? Are we out of any unity? Well, okay, let's start in the orderly fashion. Alex, Ukraine was created in 1991 as idealist project. And the idea to make a dugout of Ukrainian Liberation Army out of the multi-nation country turned out to be a failure. And it's not even an idea, it is a resentment of the old times when Ukrainians were resisting, West Ukraine was resisting Soviet Union. And second, to be delicate here, according to the international diplomatic protocol, the heads of state usually would be better off speaking their own language, because you are presenting your homeland, the country that you lead, and therefore you should be speaking on your own language. This is the heads of what the heads of main countries do, following the protocols and having dignity and attempts to be liked by Japanese and maybe speaking Japanese. What for? Even if you know the language brilliantly, you are a president of Ukraine. Ukraine has Ukrainian as government language. I would be only addressing them in Ukrainian. Moreover, even from the technical standpoint, while this is being translated and you do know English, you have time to think, to correct your position, to address the shades, everything that is so important during communications. The most advantageous position is when you know English, when you speak Ukrainian, and your translator translates you, and you can listen. How was it translated? And then you also listen to another translator on the other side, because he's also translating and commenting to the other party. And you can always intervene and add additional special term that you think fits better. As a language that has an influence of Latin, the right verb means a lot. A simple example, in Russian language there is one word, to kill, and derivatives from that language. To off, etc., right? You cannot write in Bible, oh, do not off your neighbor. But in English you have at least 4 different verbs talking about that act. And depending which verb you're using, you can understand which killing are you talking about. And these nuances are understood to those who studied theology. Let's not point fingers here. But there you do want to compare the phrase in 6 different languages to verify the meaning. And this is the right approach. This is the proper approach, regardless of how well you speak the foreign language. Even in Moscow, he should be speaking Ukrainian, if you're president of Ukraine. And for the last 30 years, our presidents were switching to Russian out of courtesy. What for? Speak Ukrainian, they will translate you. They will have to. Oh, most of them will probably even understand without translation. Right. If you want to speak Russian, you can make an insert for Russian people and say, now I want to send a message to Russian citizens. Speak Russian, and then switch back to the official language of your country. And that's it. Let the translators translate, and you will think it through, you'll play with the nuance. This is how it's done on the technical level. Now, where does this series of interview come from? The president is preparing for a trip abroad. So he already announced that he'll be meeting northern supporters of Ukraine. And of course, for these visits, both sides do prepare. Our side is making a bunch of statements, the president, head of his office, then the receiving parties also do that. But our president and his apparatus are making statements directly, while in the West, they're giving the statements to the press. You can always point at the press and say they changed the meaning of what I wanted to say. Now let's also address how is the press managed. Not too many people understand this, but generally it works like this. In the West, when you need to send a message or send a certain position, express it to be known, ex-bureaucrats, ex-functionaries, not the current ones, they reach out to journalists and they tell them in a state of secrecy, do not tell that I have told you that, but here is the scoop. And the difference between Ukrainian and Western journalists is that the Western usually go check and verify this data. But where they go and check and verify, there would be other advisors, ex-advisors, who would be already in agreement to send that message. So they would send it. Then eventually the actual advisors or actual bureaucrats taking those positions would also mention that fact to the press. And they could mention it in passing by, saying that I have not told you that, but they would verify it through other angles, and then it becomes a verified, according to BBC standards and better journalist standards, that becomes a verified data that is being published. Of course, the world is dynamic. Some advisors may add a bit different angle to that information, But what are we doing in Ukraine? Our journalists are not checking what they have heard. They immediately go to the media and pour it out. And I will pay attention to a couple of statements here that we hear from the West. First, bad English of the president and the head of his office. This is just the text. What is the context of that? Ineffective communication with partners, unsatisfactory communication. Because the key phrase in this message is that the West cannot understand always what exactly does Ukrainian delegation imply. And I want to say Zelensky's English and Yermak's English are not so bad to not be understood, especially given that you're using a set of common phrases over and over again, because in the 2.5 years you're talking about essentially same things. Missiles, safety, energy systems, even a monkey or a parrot will be able to eventually learn the vocabulary. So this is not about bad English. This is actually nitpicking. The message is about understanding. We fail to understand what exactly do they mean. And second, the statements are made by European Commission, not individual politician in Europe, but it's Euro Commission that is sending a message that war marathon in Ukraine media needs to be done with, and normal broadcasting needs to return. Right, that happens right before Zelensky's visit. Meantime, our Ministry of Information comes out and says, no, we will continue running with marathon till the end. This is our position. So why do you think they're bringing these 2 points? Third piece of information, Stefanchuk's brother mentioned that elections will be in 3 to 6 months. That adds a vignette on this. It's preparation for elections. And the combined West and Europe specifically, that is closer to us, more closer than America, because it is more concerned about Russia and has more joint interests with Ukraine because we're on the same continent. Here, they're trying to be delicate. They start to decrowning the myth that was earlier printed 3 times on the cover of Time magazine. I would put it like this. So, Stefanchuk, in your view, made a statement that is generally correct. Right. Another publication by the son of the head SBU. This is also decrowning of the myths of war. If you think that Mikhail Tkach is an independent journalist, I would question your knowledge. I would put question mark there. This is a series of different attacks on certain leading positions in Ukraine. This is not exactly directed attack at certain positions, but it's directed in terms of vector. And they're attacking at right now the beginning of this war. Poroshenko was involved in this, and the others. And I think that the first of the stones that will crumble is the stone of myth of the beginning of war. Then they will dispel the myth about resistance, and then eventually they'll dispel the myth about government knowledge and talents. And this all will be going in the framework of the next 6 months process before elections. Alexey, but you've participated in forming some of these myths. Oh, Alex, which myth have I formed? Please advise me. So, you were very active in early stages of this war. So, which myth do you think will be demystified or dispelled first? Well, Alex, I have failed to create any myth in my point of view. And we do have people in our chat. I'm asking them, please follow, please comment if I have created any myth that you think I did. The myths were created not by us. It was generally formed by the West, by all these bowing, standing, and sitting parliaments, by all these publications in the Western media, the leading ones. And they'll have to dispel all that. And they're dispelling not our myths, but their own myths. Oh, you're talking about the Western myths? Yes, I'm talking about the Western mythology here. And the decision was already made, and it starts to reveal itself. And it will get only worse very soon. I hope you will not push me to make a conclusion here. I hope our viewers will make a conclusion on their own. Well, no, it is actually very interesting to try to push Arestovych to make a conclusion out of a big statement. Okay, so the West inflated a big myth, and now they're deflating that myth. What do you think it means in the view of looming elections soon? That's a simple exercise for the logic of our listeners. So Yermak apparently now is in United States, then he goes to Canada, or this other visit with, oh, hang on. There was another piece of interview I wanted to mention here, Alex. There could be three positions in life: a victim, an author, and an observer. What is the difference between the position of victim from a position of an author who is in charge of what he is doing? The author is always talks about reasons. It is always about reasons. It's easy to catch the author's position. The position of the victim is always about consequences. Find at least one position statement of Ukrainian president where he talks about reasons. That's why we have our own myth here in Ukraine, a myth of the global victim. And those who like this myth, by supporting it, by screaming about the victimhood of Ukraine, they are forgetting to understand that victims are not liked in the global politics. You are being wiped the feet on you if you're a victim. And very often countries will not even communicate with you if you are too much of a victim. You become basically a roadkill. And it's only vultures who would be feeding on you. Others will not pay attention to you. I was always fighting against this myth of victimhood of Ukraine. And our president talks a lot about we were not given, we do not have enough, and we produce only 10% of our own weapons, by the way. That's why. We are putting ourselves in the position of a victim voluntarily. We're begging for help, and they're putting a price tag on us, and they're communicating with us as with a fallen body somewhere in the depths of African savanna, and eventually will be dissected. Alexei, the visit of Yermak to North America, is it some sort of a matting? Is it a way to find ways out in case everything crumbles in Ukraine? Well, we have presented a false issue here in Ukraine. We're talking about bipartisan support with the United States, but in reality, we're only partners with Democrats since '91. All our Ukrainian politics are tied to Democrats. We tied ourselves to them, we chained ourselves to the Democrats, we have quarreled with Republicans, and we continue this madness. In reality, we should have been building relations with both. And this is a separate story. I did mention earlier, as me and colleagues were bringing different Republicans back in April of the beginning of this year, the Security Service of America was actually prohibiting them to come to Kiev. It was still under siege. And those were some of the oldest Republicans in power. And they came to Kiev 3 times. These Republican elders, 3 times there were agreements. They would not have quarreled with their security service for nothing, right? So 3 times they went against them and they came to Kiev, and 3 times they were not granted an audience by Zelensky's government. And on the 3rd time they said, well, we're not going to continue that. And our latent visit of veterans, disabled, and presidential people to try to appeal to Republicans, they are not effective. It's too little too late. And they're not even affecting Democrats as well. So these are all the chronicles of the falling airplane out of the sky. And I think it all started back in '91, frankly. Well, are you justifying the situation of the current leadership in Ukraine with this? No. This is just unfolding same situation. I'm talking about the reasons now. I'm saying that if Ukraine does not change its politics that started back in 1991, we're done with. If we do not change our position globally, we will be done with. This is my main idea that I'm trying to push in the understanding in the minds of our people. Because this power is already gone. This is just a little blip on the radar. We've been degrading over 30 years, and right now we are in a worse condition since 1991 than any other leadership that was in Ukraine. So you, if I understand you correctly, these visits by Yermak, this announcement of some good news, oh, forget about them. Just forget. This is about nothing. All right, the backward count to elections in the United States has started. What do you mean, Alex? The elections are already unfolding. A third of Americans have already voted. Right. Somebody is burning some of the urns with the ballots and stuff already in the news. Right. Some people did vote preemptively, they voted early. Other people are about to vote on the 5th of November, which is upon us. I understand that, in my mind, Bankova Street would actually benefit if America had some disturbance near the elections or after the elections, or not. How would that be beneficial? What do you mean? Well, the situation of chaos, undefined future, and whoever would have come to power in America as a result of ensuing chaos, he would be considering the second half, maybe the minority or majority of the United States populace, depending upon how the country votes and who actually gets to the White House. Maybe the Congress will be splitting the end result, voting for it. So maybe Bankova will appreciate that disturbance. No, Alex. Regardless whether there will be some riots in the streets or not, frankly, I don't think there'll be a potential for, like some people say, civil war here in the States. At this moment, it doesn't look like likely. They'll continue supporting Ukraine, regardless of who gets the office, but this support will be dwindling. And both Republicans and Democrats, for different reasons, but they're talking about the same thing of dwindling the support to put more responsibility on Europe. And second, they want to finish this war. So regardless who wins, the policy towards Ukraine will be the same, just for different reasons. So there'll be no difference for us, whoever wins. So to end this war without a winner, as Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, had expressed today, is that the option? What is without a winner? What do you mean by win, Alex? Modern military science, both in the East and in the West, implies that the war goes across many domains: information, cyberspace, space, airspace, on the water, underwater, on the front, on the land. But the main domain is information space. So viewers, pay attention here, please. With all respect to those who are fighting in the trenches, one of the main domains of military doctrine, all politicians, all researchers, all military experts, both on the side of China, Russia, United States, even Europe, they're considering cognitive warfare to trump the actual physical one. Because you can have a lot of soldiers, but if they're not willing to fight, if they have a cognitive conflict about this war, you will not make them fight. Or you may be armed like Vietnamese partisans with some very basic arms, but they really wanted to win. Some of them prevailed over USSR, the others prevailed over United States, and the others in other parts of the world prevailed over British Empire. So where there is no winner, in which domain? Let's take very couple easiest levels: geopolitics and land. Russian Federation, having expelled a lot of lives and resources, have captured 18% of Ukrainian territory. Even without these 18%, Ukraine still remains one of the biggest countries in Europe, slightly smaller than France, now that we're without Crimea and occupied territories. But still, we're second biggest in Europe. Take it, exploit, use it wisely, and be happy. Are these material losses so colossal? If you just look at the territories, just for the format of our show, for the sake so we don't speak for another 2 hours. No, right? It's not too big of a deal. It's a loss, right, but it's not critical. You can probably laugh at Russian Federation that it being so much bigger than us on all the parameters and having wasted so much resources, have only captured 18%. If I was Russian generals, I would have lined myself in line and committed mass suicide in this case for the results of this war. Now, if we take geopolitical goals in this regard, how do they look? What was the goal of this war? Putin actually voiced the ultimatum to the West through the words of his diplomat at the beginning, saying, go back to the borders of 91, NATO. 97. NATO did not withdraw to the borders of 97. NATO actually grew a bunch of other members who are now directly bordering Russia, Finland and Sweden, and they actually lock Russians' exit in the Baltic to the ocean. Is it a victory for Russia? Is it a loss for Russia, or is it no winner for Russia? This also looks very much like a defeat, right, for Russia. And if we take a bigger geopolitical scale, this war started in a unipolar world. Remember debates between Trump and Kamala, who, when Trump said that you are bad negotiators, you failed to negotiate with Russia. The moment when Kamala lost her snarky smile, that some people call pathological, I'm being delicate here, and very expressively says that we were not going to negotiate with anybody. Who are they to be negotiated with? And this was the position of American elites before this war, at least on the democratic globalist side. There's nobody to talk to. Who are those, China and Russia? They have to do what we tell them to do. And what is happening today, 2.5 years later? There is a big Yalta, right? Everybody is agreeing with everybody. As we are seeing, the brains in the West are meeting the officials in the East, and now the world is becoming a multipolar, right? Geopolitical gates of the unipolar world was broken by the ram that was has a tattoo Russia on it, and the gates had an insignia Ukraine on it. The gates are broken apart. The ram has lost his horns. The West now says, okay, now that you've broken the gate, let's talk. And the global South says, okay, well, thank you, Russia. Now we can talk with the West. And to pay you some homage, we will visit your BRICS meeting in Kazan. And this is one of the highest achievements by Putin during this war. He left the mode of complete isolation when he started this war. He now got out of that lower bottom spike. He's now going on the up, and this is a big achievement for Russian politics to create a multipolar world from a unipolar. This is definitely a victory for the global South and Russia in this regard, and it's 100% loss for the global West. If you discount some of the voices in the West who are saying, well, this is actually what we like because we can continue playing on the cracks of this multipolar world, and they can. So it'll be not so easy for BRICS, and it will not be easy for the West as well, because countries are becoming more defined. They understand their preferences, they understand their goals now better. While we missed another moment looking at the drones and the actions on the front, we missed a fragment where China and India de-escalated on the border in the mountains, where usually the United States was helping them to de-escalate before. Now they figured out how to do it on their own. Then Iran and Saudi Arabia, with the help of China, are now conducting naval exercises jointly, which has never happened before. So Global South has its own nuance, of course. The leader of India, Modi, came out and said, I do not see the need to make BRICS an anti-Western bloc. And Putin corrected him and said, no, of course, we're not. We are just not the Western bloc. And they have their own nuance and issues, but overall, this is their victory. They turned it into a multipolar world again. Everything else, including material achievements in this war, those, let's call them discussable, right? That's why when people scream capitulation, what are we talking about? On the ground, we have Russian flag over Lvov, or what? And I'm asking our viewers, what is capitulation for them? And are they answering, Alex? I think in our understanding and what I'm reading is refusal from our goals of this war, refusal from our own territories, from joining NATO, from joining European Union, and refusing to pursue the project anti-Russia, and refuse the ideology of a narrow project of nationalistic scale in Ukraine. And that's capitulation. I think what they imply is, well, this is not capitulation, Alex. Let me read it from the dictionary. If somebody doesn't know what it is, always check with the dictionary. Capitulation is an agreement of ceasing the struggle between two warring parties. In the international terms, it's also including the surrender of the armed forces of one country. So this is a qualifier. Do you think we will have our troops surrendering to Russia, regardless of how the front is collapsing or crumbling? Of course not. So there will be no capitulation. But there will be agreements. And there can be a lot of agreements of different kinds. Then do not also mix capitulation with absolute capitulation. Because when people say that, they remember the paradigm of the Second World War, when you see the Germans raising their hands and leaving the bunkers, right? This is not the end of this war for Ukraine. Even with the full collapse of the front, this is not what's going to happen, because Russians technically cannot occupy the territory of our country, the whole left side of Ukraine. And even broken and retreating forces of Ukraine will at least hold onto Dnieper River. So forget about that absolute capitulation without any terms. There will be terms. They will not be advantageous. There will not be parity between our terms and Russian terms, but they are talking about Istanbul agreements. There'll be certain agreements on land, and there'll be different angles of these agreements, and some of them will not be in favor of Russian Federation. For example, gas transmission system that Russia needs so much, that has to go through the territory of Ukraine to their main partner in Europe, Hungary. This is a condition, right? We are allowing them to exploit this pipeline or not. Well, it's working, right, regardless of war, and oil is going. Well, this is not capitulation. Exactly. So while there is pipe, there is no capitulation. Exactly. Russia needs us in order to facilitate. And that's just one of the many elements that contribute to that. And of course, there will not be disarmament of Ukrainian military, and capitulation actually implies that. When army of the country stops functioning as the organized system, this will not be happening. So forget about capitulation. I know that Russian citizens really love my interviews, and they jump and huff and puff when they hear some words. Capitulation, capitulation. Dear bunnies, forget about that. When you perhaps think that Russia is advancing, it is not Russia that is winning in this war. You're newbies who do not know how to fight, with all your Kremlin general command and Kremlin leadership. As a military person, looking at the way you apply your forces on this front, it can only cause me a serious case of giggles looking at the analysis of what you guys are doing, what your commanders are doing on the front. Sometimes they show bright things, but generally, almost I'm falling off the chair laughing every time when I go in the details. This is not because you know how to fight. It is because we are idiots in Ukraine. Not you are fantastic, but we are complete idiots here. And if I was at the helm today, I would have shown you how to fight, but I think God needs something different at this stage of our country development. Alexey, so there is also now a lot of clouds over this head of Syrsky. Well, no, still they will not appoint me. Why? No, they don't even dream. Zelensky government will never put me over anything. So once again, message to Russian patriots when you're screaming that Russia is advancing. No, that you only cause me to laughter even more. You're just as mad as we are, but you're systemic madman. And the order always beats the class. You have the long will of secret. You have a secret of long will. The Mongols taught you that main geopolitical weapon of Russia, the long will, which it is. When you entered first, we tore you apart. Our special forces destroyed your 45th Brigade, your Special Forces Brigade, had beaten there at a pistol distance and just killed everybody, all of your super-duper special forces. Our territorial defenders, your average guys who haven't served in the army for a while, in Sumy, had kicked the ass of Chechen special forces and your tank brigades, your elite 10 brigades, without even being completely military force at this point. They were volunteers. And I remember you guys at the meetings in Istanbul. You were looking rather pale. You are facing a total failure of your military campaign. You are running from Chernigov and Sumy. We have beaten you in Kharkov operation. But what is important to understand here about Russia is that, yes, you can beat them on the battlefield, but as long as they remember their main geopolitical instrument, the long will, they're like that liquid terminator will reassemble again. And it was enough for them to rebuild it again from the total failure, and now again they're in the winning phase of this war, and they turned the tide in it. This is what Russia has. This is what Mongols taught them. Genghis Khan and his troops, they, to their honor, figured out a way from an absolutely failure situation, they got to a somewhat better position, and now they have a cherry on a cake, the BRICS summit in Kazan. They clenched their teeth, they made the right decisions, and regardless of losses, they continued to go. Here, you can take your hat off and say, well, you have some recognition. And I always keep saying that long will of Russia, I think it was the first time when I said about that in the public media back in 2023 on the site of Dmitry Karchinsky. And here, I'm being realistic. I'm saying as is. They were defeated initially, moral, geopolitical, military, and they still have risen and crushed the resistance they faced, and now they're in a winning phase. And we, having global support of a global South and many others, we have trained our chances down the toilet, because our geopolitical weapon, I guess, is the fight with reasoning, with consequences of actions in the media sphere, because Ukraine will always find a way, as I keep joking, to replace action and consequence, to change their places in the media press. And once again, my message to Russian patriots who are screaming that they're winning: no, you're not winning. It's just us who are losing. It doesn't feel better though, Alexei. I understand, but you have to separate two things. They're different. That's why, again, a message to Russians: when you think you're super soldiers, you're not being truthful. You're not super soldiers, you're anything but. It's just we're idiots here. And frankly, it's actually good for us that you keep thinking that you're super troopers, because perhaps it will be easier for us to kick your butt later if you can continue thinking of you so honorably. All right. You know, if one listens to you now, Alexei, and if you look also at the map of different townships and villages that are being surrendered to Russian troops today, Yasnaya Polyana, we saw some notes by our military that Selidova is still probably holding. Alex, it will be worse. The front is crumbling. Ukrainian front is crumbling like wet toilet paper. And people who've been forced on this front, who've been pushed to the front, they will not be fighting. And we've done something stupid that I don't think has ever been before, where we take surgeons and military experts who know how to build the equipment, and we make them into infantry. What is a platoon commander? Even if you spend 3 months on him, he'll be a relatively good platoon commander, right? But if you're really serious about it. But it takes you 7 years to prepare a doctor, and they take them and throw them as an infantry. This is our idiocy. That's the idiocy I'm talking about. We have detachments that are less idiotic than what's happening, and they have not withdrawn since 24th of February, 2022. They have not left their position, some brigades. And regardless of gliding bombs and Russian military genius, nothing helps. They're already dying as flies. And they have 5 layers of Russian troops in the ground in front of them. Where is that? Belogorovka, 54th Brigade. They've been there for a long time, and they're still holding it since the beginning of war. And this is still one of the main directions of Russian attack. And Russians are failing to take it. Some battalions are holding positions so well that it's the 6th wave of Russians who are refusing to storm them. My friend and classmate is heading them. 6th rotation of Russian troops is refusing. After a couple attempts, they're refusing to even go fight there. There are people who are even on a lower level know how to fight, and they show how it should be done. Our higher framework does not work, and it doesn't have, we're also missing the middle. And that's it. The country that has lost to a small Ichkeria, to Chechnya, and is paying money to Chechnya, could have been more modest about their military talent. This is not something you deserved, Russians. All these villages and townships, this is not because you were so smart or successful. It's because our front is crumbling, and not for your reasons. And it likely will be worse. Probably they will get to Dnieper and Zaporozhye. And those townships may become frontline cities. But it's not their advantage, that's not their achievements, it's our idiocy. That can be fixed like this, right now. You just need to do 3 things, and we keep talking about them, and all that Russian offensive will come to a halt. But they will not do them, because they're idiots. Tomahawks? No, Alex, not tomahawks. Simple, basic means refit the old brigades. Do not make new brigades. Go leave your positions and take strategic positions that are easy to defend, and prepare those positions for defense so you can defend them maneuverably. This is difficult for me to say, but this is as if you and I would be discussing how to record the stream properly, and you would have to tell me or viewers that first you need to turn the light on, turn the microphone on. So very basic ABCs. And I'm feeling queasy about having to say that. It's like explaining to the surgeon that you need to wash your hands before surgery and do not use tools that are dirty for internal operations, and do not use unsterilized equipment, right? And this is exactly what we're doing. This is the level of idiocy we're doing when we're sending doctors to fight as infantry. And you think this is the lowest we can fall down, but I would say I'm optimistic. Ukraine is capable. We'll invent new ways to fall deeper, new ways to fall both morally and organizationally. We'll probably present some surprises to the community. What do you think, like female mobilization? We'll see. I don't think about female because I think we need to look more in the organizational sphere. That's where they will be more brilliant, in quotes. And they'll be afraid to do women, to send women to the front, because they will just dismantle the whole power. In Ukraine, maybe we have the last hope on women right now, because men are not really pushing back. Yeah, that's true. I can attest to that. I think I asked you this question about one before last. Is it time to remove Syrsky from his position? Yeah, I think he needs to be removed and replaced with another general. I would have actually given another name, but I'm not going to do that, to save him from additional attacks by Syrsky and Zelensky government. Problem is that it still is not the highest position. Above that position, there is another leader. So the question needs to be posted wider, as Stefanchuk outlined in his commentaries, because everything stems from the highest level. Syrsky is not the main god. He's an intermediary. He needs to work together with, and that person that he works with. Remember the old Soviet anecdote? When there are three guys who have gotten 25 years in Siberia, in Gulag camps, and they're discussing why they're there. One said that he went to protest against the Russian troops in Czechoslovakia. The second said that Brezhnev, the leader, is an idiot. And the third one said, well, I was a plumber. I came to the Kremlin to fix a few things, and I saw that their pipes are rotten, and I said, you need to change the whole system here. That's why I got 25 years. Right, I think that's a good transition to mention that there is a fundraiser for our troops under the original stream. You can find it in links below. And with this, we're concluding translation of the first half of the stream of Alexander Shelest and Alexey Arestovich. Till later.